Hello, this is the final one of my videos on deprivation theories, drawn from a long essay I wrote on sociological theories regarding the emergence and development of new religious movements. So this is part of the section on psychological theories, and I'm going to talk today about the concept of deprivation. Various authors have listed the wide range of possible sources of deprivation, thereby expanding the concept so as to avoid the limitations of absolute material deprivation as a causal explanation. Thus, Gurr, citing the non-fulfillment either of basic physical needs or of the desires to participate in collective decision-making, to be free from oppression and disorder, to gain status, to participate in stable and supportive groups, and to foster self-realization and ideational coherence. Or again, Wallace, with reference to the related concept of stress, cited as causal factors physical hunger, climatic and biotic changes, epidemics, military defeat, political subordination, cultural conflicts attendant upon acculturation, economic distress, and anomie. Generally, however, writers have sought to identify a number of distinct categories of deprivation. These classificatory schema vary considerably. Within the sociology of religion, the most influential extension of the deprivation concept was provided by Charles Glock, who identified 5 kinds of deprivation: economic, social, that is the lack of social rewards, such as prestige, power, and status, occasioned by differences in age, sex, race, education, or whatever. Orgasmic, is that how you pronounce it? Orgasmic, that is affiliation by some mental or physical disablement or stigma. Ethical, the experiences of value conflicts between individual or group ideals and those of society. And psychic, that is the lack of a meaningful system of values by which life might be interpreted and organized. Other typologies have been proposed. I won't go into all of the details. Of these, it is useful here to note Urry's argument that deprivation should be seen as a result of differential control over the sources of power. Modifying Etzione's classification, Urry identified 3 such sources: control over the economic, political, and cultural facilities. Economic power in this instance reflected control over both material resources, that is wealth, and processes of economic production and distribution. Political power was based on the threat or actual use of coercion, whilst cultural power corresponded with Etzione's normative or symbolic power, that is the power to control, influence, or manipulate the means of value creation, maintenance, and interpretation. Social status in this schema was neither a direct source of power nor of deprivation, but rather it derived from any of the 3 bases of power, either separately or in aggregation. Superficially, it may appear that these various extensions to the concept of deprivation have saved the concept as an explanatory device. Thus, various empirical studies apparently demonstrate the appropriateness of a wider conception of deprivation in accounting for the membership of those who are not suffering but from particular economic disadvantage in various religious groups. Thus, we have the idea from Campbell and Fukuyama that while church activity in general was correlated positively with social advantage and privilege, certain forms of religiosity, including traditional beliefs and devotionalism, were much stronger amongst categories of people who might be regarded as suffering from some form of deprivation, such as the elderly, females, the less educated, the poor, and the inhabitants of rural areas. Again, Hine found evidence suggesting a relationship between occupational status or power deprivation and commitment to Pentecostalism. Again, the importance of organismic deprivation would appear to be supported by England's study of Christian Science testimonial letters, most of which he found came from elderly women with health problems. Similarly, Laughlin and Stark, in their study of conversion to a deviant perspective, found that their interviewees suffered from a wide variety of social and personal deprivations and tension, whilst a number of studies of millenarian movements have pointed to their occurrence within societies suffering from a varied range of deprivations, economic crisis and loss, political powerlessness, actual threat to physical survival, disruption of traditional elites and customary behavior and beliefs, humiliating subordination, and pariah status. Despite these extensions and this seemingly confirmatory evidence, the deprivation concept remains problematic. If economic deprivation by itself is already too inclusive a category to provide a motivational basis for social movement membership, then the introduction of additional forms of deprivation only complicates the issue by including yet more members in the potential congregation of social movement members. Given that the number of individuals suffering from some form of deprivation greatly exceeds the numbers participating in social movements, or religion in general, or whatever, deprivation cannot be regarded of itself as providing sufficient cause for participation. Even if specific forms of deprivation are correlated with particular kinds of movement, the problem remains. Not all elderly women with health problems become Christian Scientists, for example. A further problem is raised by the actual extension of the concept of deprivation. The concept is saved by potentially placing it beyond any empirical validation. Its extension enables such flexibility of application that almost any movement participation may be interpreted in terms of deprivation. Thus, Gerlach's summary of the conventional wisdom regarding Pentecostalism, ipso facto a strange activity from the standpoint of conventional society, and therefore attractive only, according to some people, to those suffering from some form of deprivation. He writes, poor people turn to it because they are poor, rich adults turn to it because they are psychologically disturbed, rich young people turn to it because they are unloved, misunderstood, dropouts from reality. Some are born deprived, some achieve deprivation, and almost everyone else, apparently, may have deprivation thrust upon them by the analyst. Furthermore, as both Gerlach and Hein point out, the use of deprivation as a causal variable is often tautologous. It is assumed that such and such an activity or belief could only be practiced or subscribed to by those who are sufficiently deprived in some way. An inquiry is then made as to what form of deprivation or forms of deprivation are relevant in the particular case, and the fact of actual participation judged to indicate that sufficient deprivation does exist. These pictures to the contrary, some extended concept of deprivation may remain relevant in the study of social and religious movements. Although no concept of deprivation can be regarded as a sufficient explanation for the rise of such movements, there are sufficient instances of what seem to be deprivation-related movements to make it seem likely that deprivation is either a necessary condition or a facilitating factor, at least to certain categories of movement. Thank you very much to my patrons for their kind support and encouragement, without which I wouldn't be able to make these videos. If you want to support my channel, you're very welcome to do so. Please like, comment, and share on the videos. It really does help. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. I'll give Patreon and, for the moment, PayPal links below in case you want to provide practical support. Next week, we'll talk about crisis theories. As in the past few videos, let me apologize in advance for not including the references to the various works I've consulted. All my papers are in storage at the moment, so that includes the bibliography for this essay. Anyway, have a good day.